Now let's create a really sophisticated terrain from start to finish, something that you can use in a very high quality still, whether it's just a simple 3D render or it's for matte painting or however. But the goal is that we need it to be very, very photorealistic, and we need it to follow the laws of nature, so to speak, at least as far as visuals go. So let's create a nice alpine environment. So what I want to do is I want to first get a nice peak going, and then we'll give it a little bit of a surrounding ground. So this, I kind of like this. I'm experimenting with the shape a little bit right now. I personally don't like little uniform peaks that look like a volcano. That's not how most mountain ranges look like. So I like exploring these shapes and then trying to get something out of it. Because it's something that it's about like letting the procedural work for you. So you kind of have to let go in some places and then take control in others. So I want to show you how I would do this. So I'm going to experiment a bit with the seed until I find something that looks reasonably good. Like that's cool. So you can see this would give us fantastic slopes going down here. So you play around with the seeds enough, you will start seeing really cool things. I like to note down the numbers sometimes. You can also just open the node properties menu here and create a preset, so it'll just save these values and you can use them later. So I think we can. This is pretty good. So let me experiment with this a bit more. If we increase the definition, it can start breaking up the slightly geometric slopes. That's looking cool. I like these almost sloped terraces because that's a great place where that's how it works in real life as well. There are these broken terraces on snowy peaks, so it gives these nice shelves for snow to like kind of settle on. So let's add a bit of terrain folding. That's one of my favorite erosive features, or rather a natural process. So if you go down here, you'll see a bunch of look dev nodes, and there's also a bunch of erosive processes that we'll use as well. So let's go for fold. I'm going to drag and drop fold on top of the ridge. Look at that. It's now creating these slanted folds. So in real life, terrains will sometimes fold because of tectonic pressures and create these large slanted terraces. So you can see that here. I can change the angle if I want it. That's kind of okay. That's not too bad. I think I like the originals. I'll right click and reset to default. What I think I will do is I'll move the midpoint, which makes these a bit sharper. The value for this, there's no magic bullet. It kind of changes based on the shape of the terrain and the slopes available, so you can just eyeball it a bit. I'm going to reduce the range. That's too much. We don't want this much folding because now we're losing what made this terrain pretty cool. So I'll just gradually go up. That's not bad. Now here's the thing. I like this, but I also like the original. So there are a few ways we can get the best of both worlds. And it's a matter of combining, but we can do that with just the post-process stack, so we don't have to worry about the combined node. So I'll go down here, and you have the min mode. So it'll take the lesser of the 2 pixels, or the lower value. That's kind of cool. I like this. Inversely, you have the max mode, so it'll take the taller of the 2 pixels. That looks a bit too much like what we already had. And then the other option, which is slightly hidden, if you expand this, you have the influence, which is the influence of this current process. So if I go halfway, we're getting the best of both worlds. But in this case, it's creating a bit of ambiguity in the shape. In other cases, if you want to blend the two effects, that could work fine. So I'm just going to go back to how it was, like maximum. And then I think min mode worked quite well. We get to keep these cool terraces on this side, and we get the slants on this side. Now, I think one thing I want to experiment with is adding a different floor. So first, since I'm going to go do some random experimentation, I'll go and save this, and we'll call this our matte paint mountain. Let's see. Okay, that's cool. So let's add, let's go up. Let's see what different kinds of nodes we have. And I kind of like worse lands. We have bad lands, but worse lands are worse. They're just more dangerous to navigate. Oh, look at that. You would not want to go through this without a proper 4x4. So this is cool. It has that sense of ruggedness that we want with this one. So let's combine the two. And we'll switch to max. Oops. We'll switch to max mode. There we go. Aha, there's a bit of fighting. So this is taking over, like the worst lands are taking over because they're so tall. So one of the things I can do very easily is I can clamp this down, but alternatively, I can open the post process because you can see there's space here. So I can click drop to floor. And it'll go as low as it can without removing any of the lower parts of the terrain. Now when we go here, that's cool. We get a bit of this and we get a bit of that. So that's working out well. So let me just see. There we go. That's flat. There's this. I like this, but I think this needs to be a bit lower, which I think I can get by reducing the max. Otherwise, I could go back here and do a bit of clamping, but I think 60% should be sufficient. There we go. That's cool. I'll save this again. Okay. Now, so far we've been relying mainly on the erosion node, and the erosion node is both powerful and it's also low level in the sense that it's one of the more building blocks of many of the tools in Gaea. And some of the tools that are built with such low level items are the look dev nodes. So far you've seen a bit of the Canyonizer and Fold, but let's take a look at some of those stronger ones like stacks. So if we apply stacks on this terrain, it turns it into this massive, powerful desert looking environment with all these mesa-like structures, the terracing and so on. So that's one look. Another one is the carver, where it takes the basic shape and carves the heck out of it. Which again, not too bad. Like if we try min mode on this, there are certain parts of this that work. So let's see if we can get some of it with the influence. So the influence slider will let us retain some of this. That's cool. One of the reasons why I like such vertical carved lines is that when we do erosion on top of this, it creates kind of like a predefined channel for things to flow through. So erosion gets biased towards those areas more. So let me change the sunlight again so we can see things a bit better. There we go. So now that's looking cool. It's not the most imposing peak if you look at it like this, but I like to look at my terrain from this angle, and that's not bad. That's going to work quite well. So one of the things we can do at this point is kind of bring this up if we wanted to. So I will add a FX node, And let's do auto level and then clamp. Again, we're not going to do this too much, just a little so the peak can be a bit imposing. There you go. This works as well, like depending on the type of scene, you can get away with this as well. But let's keep it a bit taller, just in case. If we wanted to, this would be a good place to bulk it up as well, because we want to erode this. But for the moment, I'm not going to do that. Let's first add some erosion and see what happens, and then we can come back and do this. So let's do a bit of the erosion simulation here. And like we've been doing before, we're going to have a lot of random sedimentation. I can go higher like this. That looks good. You can see what I said about the flow structures. It's like honoring all of that. It's flowing there more. And then all the ridge lines. We're actually losing a bit of the if I go here, this. So I think I will also experiment with how it looks like without the carver. So let's see. I'll just reroute this straight. So this is now kind of like a offshoot. That kind of works, but at the same time, that's also destroying a lot of it. I think it's the deposits. So I will reduce the inhibition. Let's reduce it further. That looks good. Another trick, like this is, well, not exactly a trick, but we reduce the rock softness, so there isn't that much soil being generated and more of the original shape gets retained. The terraces will get shattered a bit because that's what erosion will do. It'll break through. But if we want to get some of it back, this is where we can use the min mode down here, and we can get some of this back. So that's starting to look cool. I think I'll also increase down cutting. So, like so. Some of this will be covered with snow, so I like to add more character, sometimes a bit more than necessary. So this is looking cool. Now, this was nice too, and who knows, we can maybe bring some of this back. There's a neat little trick that you can do. So let me get rid of the FX, and I will min this and just get the difference. So the difference is giving me these pieces. So it's the difference between this and this. Oh, the influence is set to 50%. That's why. There we go. I thought it looked a bit weird. So now with the influence at full, there. This is basically the inverted version of what was being carved out. So now we can take this and combine it with this. And I'll use the subtract mode, but we'll have to do it very delicately. So something like maybe 20% to start. Oh, this can take a bit of a beating. So I think 50% is what we had. That's not too bad. I think I don't want it everywhere. So let's create a slope node. Not the slope noise, but a slope node, which is a data mask. And I will restrict it to, let's say, or actually we want it coming from the erosion node, because that's where the changes are happening. Pull this away. And I'll pin this as the underlay so we can see. Okay, so let me change the slope range that we want to target. So some of the slightly steeper areas, like this, I'm just increasing the fall off a bit so it's a gradual change. And let's put that as the mask input for combine. Now, what you see this spikiness everywhere, that's because the slope has to deal with all the tiny little fluctuations everywhere. So what I would do at this case, at this point, is I'll add a blur node. I'll reduce the power and increase the iterations to soften it up, like so, and feed that into combine. There, that's not too bad. Now we're getting some of this back. So let me clean this up a bit. And I think we can reduce the slope influence a bit more. Have it go really steep. Like so. And again, I'm not too worried about like losing all of the original structure, because here, mainly on these slopes, things are going to get covered with snow. But at this point, we are losing a lot of the material. So this is where I'll probably go back. And here in fold, maybe I can, or no, we're doing a min effect here. So I'll go to the combined effect and then enable shaper and bulk this up just a tad. Let's see what that does. So as it does all the processing, okay, there we go. That's more big and rugged. And then here, just like we did before, I'll add a FX node. So I can auto level and clamp, just to get some of the peak back while leaving all this cragginess in here. Then let's do a second erosion pass, because erosion is something that you might want to use frequently and whenever possible lightly. So here I will remove most of the inhibition. We don't want too much sedimentation. Like before, we want random sedimentation. So that's cool. But then at the same time, I'm going to turn on selective processing, and it's going to be set to altitude by default. Let's change it to slope, and I'll reverse it so it only applies to the top slopes. So there you can see, if I go back, that's the original. This is the only stuff that gets affected. Let me reduce that a bit. So it's like this top part is what gets affected. If you think this is the height of the terrain, if you flip this 90 degrees, this is the top, whatever, 30%, that gets affected because it's reversed. Otherwise, it's this bottom part that gets affected. So if I do this, you can see there. The higher peaks are left alone. The bottom get this. Actually, that's not bad. Let's keep that. And just to see if I did the reverse, this is what we get, which is also not bad. We get these cool erosive structures, and at the same time, we get to keep a lot of the cragginess. So you can go with either one. It's fine. In fact, at this point, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save as. So if you're playing with these exercise files, you can go make different decisions and see what you come up with. So anyways, I'll go back to the non-reverse, the normal one. This kind of looks nice. We don't want the terrain to be too rugged as well, because not every mountain has to be super, super iconic. That's what sometimes screams CG. So we want to be subtle with what we do. I think the basic structure here is almost ready. So we are going to now separate things. Let me show you what a portal is, because that's what we'll rely on to separate all of these things. So let's look at this line. So this is a big connection. There are a bunch of these everywhere. And you can take any connection like this and press or select it like so, and press Control P, and it'll turn this into a portal. So instead of this big long connection, this is sending it out via a portal, and this is consuming it via a portal. And now this is a named portal. If you wanted to connect it to something else, so let's say I'm creating let's say another FX node, for example, and I wanted to get the input from here, I can always drag and connect it like this, or I can just drag and release it in empty space, go to portals, and select FX. And it gets connected no matter where it is. So it's great for like creating separate pieces, but where it's going to be really great, first, let me undo this, and let's create a real portal for what we're going to do. So for that, I'm going to go select this node. I'm going to press X. So it brings up this delete menu. So in the delete menu, you can disconnect any of the existing things, or you can revert this from a portal. So I will go revert the output node, and it just creates it back into a normal connection. What we really want is to take this erosion node and have that become the portal that we'll use elsewhere. Before we do that though, sometimes you might want to modify this further, and then your portal becomes obsolete, or rather present in the wrong place, really. So because we're going to go and do something whole separate, and I want to leave this construction portion separate, I will create a choke point. A choke point is basically a dummy node. It doesn't do anything except just be a node. And now I'll rename this, and I'll call it Final Mountain. And I'm going to drag out a line here and go make a portal. So it's now converted the Final Mountain output into a portal. Now that can be consumed elsewhere, and if I ever want to modify something, I can just add something here. Let's consume this portal. And to keep the graphs manageable, easy to read, you can create multiple graph tabs. So here we have this. I am going to go and create a new one. So I'll go click Add New Graph, and I can give it a name. So I will call this Snow. And let's go back to this one, and I will rename this and call this Construction. And just to easily see them and separate them, I'll right click and give this a yellow color. I'll right click this and give this a blue color. So now here, let's start with some snow. So I'll bring in a snowfall node. And of course it needs data from somewhere. So because I can't connect it to something in another graph, I just release it here and consume a portal. And there we go. We have snow on our terrain. Now you can see, because the structure and character of our underlying terrain is so strong, and it has all these beautiful features everywhere that we carved out, the snow fills that in and kind of starts getting some of that character. Otherwise, it would look something like this, and that's closer to yogurt than it is to snow. So I'll reset the intensity. So the snow node is another low-level simulator, as we like to call it. So this is a very, very powerful node, which is kind of like a building block of the engine itself. And just like the erosion node, it has a lot of detailed controls. So let's look at some of them, because we're going to use this to give us that main effect and look for our terrain. So first of all, the snow line. Let's say I want this to be a bit higher up. Now the snow line is written in percentage, but it basically is controlled by the height defined in the terrain definition. So our terrain can be 2,600 meters tall. This is more like 700 meters. Doesn't matter, because we're not counting it from the ground up in our case, because we don't have like a sea level. We're just assuming it's quite higher up than the sea level. But anyways, as far as our virtual terrain box is concerned, the highest it can go is 2,600. So this is 12% of that. Or if you want to express this in numbers, I can right click and type in, say, 320 meters and hit enter. It'll set it to 320 meters, which is, we weren't that far off because we're halfway there. This is about 600-ish meters tall. So if you want it lower, if you want 250 meters, you can have that. So we actually will keep the snow line a bit higher for our initial purposes because I want to demonstrate thaw and melt. So, okay, that's looking cool already, but that's just freshly fallen snow. We want it to look a bit more like old snow, so that it's been around for a while. And so to do that, we're going to increase the settle and thaw. So as the days go by, it may get different temperatures and the snow will start to thaw a bit, but at the same time it'll also settle. And so as we increase this, you can see the snow is starting to flow down slope a bit. And we can also add a bit of melting. So let's say there's been a few hot days or weeks, and there you can have this kind of control over the snow. Additionally, if you go for something more advanced, you can choose how much the snow sticks to the terrain, especially higher up slope. So if I go higher up with adhered snow mass, it won't flow that easily and it's more sticky. So that means the settle and thaw value will have to work that much harder to bring it down. Let me reset that. And the other option is the slip off angle. So this basically is how much the snow accumulates before and what angle it starts dropping off from when it accumulates enough. So basically it's if it's on a shelf of some kind, it gathers a lot of material or snow and then it'll slip off when it reaches 38 degrees. Or so if I make it higher, you can see it sticks higher up. The slope won't affect it that easily. And so these two work hand in hand. So I could have like a lower slip off angle where everything goes down, but then the adhered snow mass will help me keep some more of it higher up. I think my settle thaw is quite strong. There you go. And the slip off angle as well. So with these two, we can get some level of control. So anyways, let me reset these so we can start creating something much nicer. The melt is quite strong, so I would recommend working with it quite delicately. One of the things you can do is you can even go in decimals, so you can right click, and if let's say 1 is not good, you can put in 0.8 and it'll have that much of a detailed effect. Not a big deal right now, but eventually you'll run into a scenario like that and you'll want to be aware of that. So I'm just going to take away melt completely right now. So that looks good. But what we really want to do is have snowfall happen in a bunch of different ways. So let's first layer it with a lot of snow that goes all the way down. So I'm going to remove the snow line because we're high up in the mountains, so there's going to be a lot of snow. The settle and thaw is nice because it brings the snow down. Like if I were to remove that, it sticks all the way up here, which we'll do secondary passes for. So this one we wanted to, oops, wrong slider. Just took all our snow. There we go. And then if I want this to be a thinner layer, I can reduce the intensity. And there, we want some of the rock exposed. And we can always get that by melting some of the snow. So if I were to just double this and double this again, you can see the effect this has. So I'll just go back to 2 or maybe 2.5. Like I said, decimals can help. So you can see this is a nice and thin layer of snow. So now we can do a second pass. So let's do another snowfall node. we have more snow up here. So this time we can do a snow line. You can see the bottom snow is not being previewed. That's because this preview is only superficial, just to help us work with this node, and it only shows us the preview for the current node. If I were to switch back to this, it would show for this. So now, with this, let's add an angular influence. And to do that, what I'm going to do is, just like we masked things before for erosion, I'm going to create an angle data mask, like so. And our, you can see the purple dot here, so our underlay is somewhere else. So I'll click this and press G and make that the underlay. So let's see, I'm going to pick an angle and a bit of fall off to create our mask. That's not too bad, because we do want it on this side more rather than this side. And I'm going to bump that into the snowfall mask. And then in the advanced section, I will turn on use snowfall mask. So now that mask is influencing how the snow falls. And so now we can have it concentrate more on these slopes. Or we can go here, change the azimuth a bit so the direction changes. I'm going to go all the way to this side so we can focus more on this slope rather than this slope, because that looked a bit heavy. Go back. There we go. You have this. Now, I'm going to increase the duration. So everything, the snowfall, which is the intensity, the settle and thaw, the melting, the slipping, all of that is essentially just a massive simulation. And the longer you run the simulation, the more defined the effect is. So we can really increase this. I can increase the intensity a bit. That's really affecting this. And then I can fight it with a bit of the settle and thaw and a bit of the melt. There you go. So that's additional snow that's fallen. Now let's combine these two. So to create the snow mask, let's look at the secondary output. So this, all the stuff that's white, that's this secondary output. And you can have it be one of three different things, which you choose here in the snow output dropdown. You can have the depth, which tells you how deep the snow is, which I can demonstrate best here since this can be a bit deep. So let's open up the 2D view, and I'll go to the snow output, and I'll turn on enhanced visibility so you can see here how deep the snow is in different places. Now that's not useful for us in this moment, so I'm just going to switch to either the soft mask, just there you can see it's nice and soft at the edges, or a hard mask, which is great for very finite work on masking. But in our case, I'm going to stick with the soft mask. And then this one will switch to soft mask as well. And I'll turn off the 2D preview. So, oh, and I'll turn off the enhanced visibility as well. So let's take this and this, and we combine them. And I'll just use max mode 100%, which is also a handy preset. So you can just right click, preset 100 max. And so now both of the snow has been combined. But again, we're using this for preview. I'll click this and mark it as the underlay with G. So there. So now you can see we have two different layers of snow. Now you can take this further. This angle, it's a bit too uniform. Let's add a bit of distortion to this. And a great way to add distortion is by warping. And you have warping built in most nodes in the post-process stack. So go down here, and this button, it creates displacement, which uses the warp node, which we'll take a look at in a minute. So with this, you have the amount of displacement and the scale of the noise used for displacing. So I'm going to use a smaller scale because I don't want to lose the essential shape that we had. So I'm going to go really low. But then at the same time, I'm going to make this more uneven, because otherwise, because of that hard mask, the snow was falling in specific angular shapes. Now it's more randomized. So there you can see these clumps are more randomly placed. Same for up here and here. And if you were to compare the two, you would see, like, let's say I'm going to turn this off and go here. You can see this is kind of straight, this is straight, it's just lumped on in a way. But with this, as we add this displacement, go back here, and with the warping / displacement, it has that slightly more character for look. Now I can reduce the intensity and the settle thaw just a bit, and increase the melt just a bit, because I think the snowbanks right now and the slopes, they're looking a bit too strong. Let me go back here, and so now we have snow that's like this. So let's save as. And so this is how we get this snowy mountain. But we mentioned before that when we create this, we're going to take this and have it follow the rules of nature. So let's not just have it be a big snowy peak. Let's give it two different biomes to work with. So what we'll do is, I'm just going to leave this alone. I'm going to create a new snowfall node and connect it to the previous portal. I'm going to use a tight snow line that's higher up here, but then we'll give it a lot of settle and thaw, and we'll give it a lot of intensity. And then at the same time, we'll also give it a nice low slip-off angle so it can flow down. Now, like I said, this is now starting to look more like yogurt, but that's going to help us. Because finally, I'll increase the duration of the whole thing as well. And reduce the intensity because it's a bit too much up here. And we can balance this off so we don't want it slipping off too much. So having the adhered snow mask go down, you can see the way it flows down is different. So it's looking less like the yogurt splatter that we saw before. And then let's reduce the intensity a bit further, because we don't want this to gather too much up here, although that can be a bit useful, as you'll see in a moment. Now, we're not going to use this snow at all, except for its mask. I'll show you how. So let's create a texture node, and I'll connect that to our portal. And I'll create two different sat maps that will blend together. To blend these two biomes, one will be nice and green, the other will be more barren rock. And that happens in real life, where you have regular snowfall and snow coming down from the mountain. Things don't tend to grow that well in those dead zones, as I like to call them. So how do we simulate those? Because just a snowy peak, that's cool. And you already have this file, so you can play with that. What we really want is like this delicious multi-layered ecosystem. And so we're going to turn the bottom part of this into a nice valley. And we'll come back to that in a moment and shape the snow. But for now, first let's look at the premise. I'm going to create the first sat map. Let's see if it, oh, there, it gave us a nice barren rock. I'm going to create another sat map. And this time, I'm not going to use this library. I'll switch from rocky to green. And let's get something nice and green set up, but not too much. So I'll hunt around a bit, see if we can find something. This is just for illustration purposes, so I'm not too picky what we end up using. So, okay, that's good. That's something you might find in the tundra somewhere. So let's merge these two, and we'll just use 100% blending. But then this dead zone, and that's what I'm going to rename this node, the dead zone. We're going to use the snow mask from the dead zone for blending. Oops. There we go. Oh, there's while we're doing this, let me show you a quick and easy way. Sometimes these little ports can be a bit too little, or if you're zoomed out and you don't want to zoom in because your nodes are too far away or whatever, you can do this. Just drag and release in the center of a node, and you'll get this handy menu. It'll show you which nodes are already connected, and if you connect that, it'll disconnect the previous one and connect what you've just dragged. Or you can pick one of the empty ones like we're doing here, and it does the connection for you. So let me bring this in. As you can see, I'm trying to stay organized as we go along. So, oh, there we go. I have actually masked this inversely. So let me flip these around. There you go. That's mostly what we're getting. So this is where the snow accumulates some more, and so we're going to lose that. At the same time, I think we can actually increase this effect. So let's have the slip off angle be lower still. And let's have the snow line be a bit lower as well. There we go. That helps. And before I was trying to not have too much up here, but since we are losing this much and I don't want to use a second mask for this, I'm trying to be kind of a purist really. Let's increase the intensity because we're not really going to care about how nice that snow looks. We just want most of this covered up. So let me see, I can run this a bit more. I think that's good enough. You can have a bit of a green patch here and there. As they say, life finds a way. And look at that. That's already starting to give us a lot of character. And in fact, I was just going to use this for illustration purposes, but now I'm thinking we can actually just work with this. So let me save as again, just in case we make different decisions down the line. So what we do is we leave this all here, but then when we do the snowfall, now we get to control it even more. So we kind of know, here, this is what's happening. So what we want to do is kind of keep the snow higher up, like maybe we're entering into spring, it's not snowing that much anymore, something like that. So this is kind of like where I'm going for. So it's this line. So let's do that. Let's increase the snow line for our main snow. This we can kind of keep lower. I'm not too worried about that because we can increase the melt. Oh, okay, not that much. Let's find a nice balance. That kind of looks good. It's not too bad because if it's melting, it's starting to be like this. It's not going to be a big blanket. And this, which we had up here, that kind of works. Should be okay. So then we have this, which is our combined snow output. And so now we can combine this and this. And let's do a max blend. Aha, my bad. So when you're combining something that's not color, so this is just a mask and this is color, whatever is the first one is what gets treated as the main input type. So here, because the first one is a black and white mask and the second is color, it's turning the second one into a black and white mask. So there are a couple of ways around this. Easiest way is I can just go here and here. There we go. And this is what it does. This is the easiest way. But if for any reason you want to have more control, I will take this and explicitly convert this 2D mask into a color format by pumping it into a quick color node. By default, it's black and white, so it'll be exactly like the mask. And then I can give it the top one and the bottom one. I'm also going to organize this a bit more. So this is like an inconsequential node. I don't want to know too much of what this is all the time. So I can select it and press F11. It'll collapse that node, which can be handy. So now we're explicitly combining two color nodes. And there we go. So we have snow coming in, and we kind of know where the snow flows. And so when you take this scene into your 3D application and start growing trees, you can have them adhere to this mask, and then it'll be quite visible where and how the snow flows, and where trees will grow or won't grow. So there we have our terrain.